Hey everyone, welcome back to the Book Cave with me, Jenny. So today I'm going to kick off a series of videos that is basically about Goosebumps and other 90s, 2000s middle grade horror because honestly I loved Goosebumps, Nightmare Room, Spine Tinglers, Bone Chillers, all that sort of stuff. You can see my collection back here, and I have actually grouped them into different little groups based on like what they're about. And in my research for this, I found out that there are two new Goosebumps series, and the one that I'll be starting today is Slappy World. And this is the one I will be starting with, even though it's book 17. But yeah, there is Slappy World, and then there's Horrorland. And I'm very excited to read these new ones and just kind of see what I think of them. I thought the Slappy World books would actually be about Slappy. However, they're not. At least some of them aren't. This one is not. It is, however, I guess supposed to be like a story from Slappy, because you open it up and the first thing you have is a little introduction from Slappy, and then he kind of interjects a couple times throughout the stories and gives you like a page or two, and then he has like an epilogue, his thoughts on the story and such. To be honest, at least from this one, I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't mind the introduction, but I feel like his jokes get to be a little corny and like not in a fun way, and just, yeah. So not a huge fan of that part. This is Haunting with the Stars, and as I said before, this is book 17, but much like the original series, they are pretty much all standalone. And yeah, so this one follows Murphy Shannon and his two friends, Orly and Cleo. And this is one that I did really enjoy because, as I've said before, and as you've seen with the books I read, I do really like sci-fi. And this leans very much into sci-fi. Murphy is somebody who wants to be an astronaut. He really likes space. And this is set on his school field trip to an observatory. And some things happen. And let's just say that he travels. And yeah, I thought it was fun. It was definitely more in the middle grade vein, but having read the original Goosebumps, I was expecting that. For what it is, it's very fun, and the ending was one that actually did make me laugh, because yes, I am one of those that I tend to kind of laugh at the different twist endings in horror, depending on what it is. And R L Stine, if you have read any of his Goosebumps, you know how he likes to end them, and for some reason I just find the particular way he ends them hilarious. And yeah, this one did not disappoint on that front. So I'm not sure which one I'm going to pick up next, but I will report back on that when I do. The second book in Slappy World that I shouldn't say read, I listened to this one. That is The Dummy Meets the Mummy. I have to take a minute to talk about the form that I listened to this in. This is what's called a playaway, and it's basically an all-in-one little audiobook that you plug a pair of headphones into. It has just this audiobook on it. You can skip through the chapters, change the speed, and all of that. So this is a really cool little format to listen to, and a way to like not, well, you do have an extra device to take, but something that, like, if you don't have a phone or something like that, then you can listen to it on this. So yeah, I thought that was cool. And this follows Kathy O'Connor mostly. Her dad owns a haunted museum, and this follows her in the museum. It also follows a classmate who has gotten Slappy. Obviously, he is the dummy. And then it also follows, very briefly, a stint in Egypt when they found the mummy. And this mummy also gets sold to the museum. And this is kind of a, again, classic Goosebumps. In this one, Slappy again does an introduction. He kind of interjects, and then he also ends the story with an epilogue written from his point of view. And in this one, I didn't find those interruptions as annoying. I guess just because he actually obviously was a character in this book. And this is kind of more what I was expecting from Slappy World, was it to be more about him. So, yeah, and again, the kind of telltale R L Stine ending. And this one, I would definitely kind of be interested to see a sequel to. But then, I guess that one wouldn't really be able to end on a cliffhanger like this one did. So yeah, again, just a super fun little series. This one is no exception to that. I decided to continue my Slappy World journey with It's Alive, It's Alive. And this was one of the funner ones so far. I feel like this had much less interjections from Slappy. It only had an introduction, an epilogue, and then a, like, midway check-through. Whereas I feel like the first two that I read in this did have a lot more. And that honestly irritated me in the very first one. I can't remember what that's called off the top of my head. But then the second one, The Dummy Meets the Mummy, because it was actually about Slappy, that one didn't irritate me quite as much. However, this one is also obviously a very modern day one about robots, which isn't necessarily the modern day part, but also about AI. And yeah, it was definitely an interesting one. I felt like a lot of the twists and turns were really good. The only thing I didn't care for was the very, very ending, is that, like, most of the things were explained, or could be explained away with context, which is what I did with most of them. However, the very, very end kind of just came out of nowhere in a way, considering how that particular character had been acting and the motivations behind those actions up until this. I was expecting something different from that. So yeah, the Slappy World is pretty fun, but I definitely like the original Goosebumps better. That being said, I'm definitely going to continue this series. 5th grade zombies I actually had to laugh at because it is quite obviously based on a certain Stephen King book. And I've actually seen that with a lot of R L Stine's books. Actually, honestly, in all of his series. Even, like, some of the Fear Streets were somewhat inspired by that, obviously. And yeah, I found that quite fun. And this one follows a city kid who moves from Queens, New York to Wisconsin for a year because his parents are going on a business trip and he's staying with his aunt and uncle and two cousins there. So this is kind of like the OG Goosebumps, where the kids, honestly, a lot of times are, for some reason or another, not with their parents, but with either, like, another guardian, or they're maybe, like, in an after-school club, and it's more about what goes on there. And yeah, one thing I am definitely liking about this as well is that even though, you know, from the title it's 5th grade zombies, the school is not that big of a part. Classes are not that big of a part. And so I feel like that makes it more able to appeal to even, obviously, like me, people who are past the age of what this is traditionally meant for. Because this says it appeals to 4th to 6th graders. And I honestly do think, had I not read the original Goosebumps, that I probably wouldn't be as into these. These honestly are just hitting for me because it's such nostalgia. And yeah, I do really like this one and feel like it fits in with a lot of the older ones. Attack of the Jack follows Violet and Sean, who are two siblings sent to spend, I believe it's like 3 weeks, with their Uncle Jim while their parents are on a business trip over the summer. And obviously from the cover, you can see this is pirates. And I can't honestly think of another Goosebumps that has pirates. So for that reason, I did kind of like this one. I do, however, feel like this one was a little weaker just because the ending felt a little too neat for Goosebumps. I've spoken about this obviously before, that they tend to have a little bit of a twist ending or a open-ended ending. And yeah, this one, although it was nice to see everything tied up, I just felt like that made it kind of not really fit, to be quite honest. And this is also one where Slappy interjects quite a bit. And as I've said with the other books where that happened, I don't particularly care for that when it's not a book that is about him. Granted, this is only book 2 in the series, so I feel like this was still kind of experimenting and seeing what worked and what didn't. So yeah, it is kind of fun to see that progression as well. The final book I read for this little vlog is Revenge of the Invisible Boy. And this one, I have to say, is probably one of the top 3 in this set of 6 books. Obviously, it was this one, and then the other 2 I liked were the very first one I read. I keep forgetting the title, and then It's Alive, It's Alive, because of my enjoyment for sci-fi. This one I just enjoyed so much because it honestly kind of felt like the original Goosebumps. It gave me a lot of the kind of Phantom of the Auditorium in a bit. Also, My Best Friend is Invisible, Monster Blood, kind of all those. And unlike the last one, this one had the little twist ending that was left at least somewhat open-ended. It is pretty obvious from what happened right before what goes on after the ending, but I did like that little twist there that was a callback to the original. This cover also really reminds me of The Haunted School, which was another one of my favorites of the original. But this follows Frankie Miller and 2 of his friends, plus another classmate that they kind of dislike. And Frankie is into magic, as are the rest of his friends, and this follows some mishaps with that. And yeah, just a very fun little entry in this series, and a very fun way to round this out. So those are the first 6 books I read for this little R L Stine / middle grade horror series. I had a lot of fun with this. I hope you did as well, and I hope you'll tune in for the rest of these that I make. And of course, I will have all my socials linked at the very end. And if you did enjoy this, please hit like and subscribe and hit that little bell icon. That way you'll be notified every time I post a new video. And I will see you next time in the book cave.